Okay, good evening. So now we'll go to through topics which are related to non-aligned movement, Cold War. So now we'll try to cover the concepts or the questions on NAM as well as the Cold War and the American hegemony. So in these three topics, you can say questions has come in the exam in previous year. So first, let us take down certain points which you can connect with non-aligned movement. So whatever the key points you can develop regarding NAM. So here we are covering both. One is non-aligned movement as a concept. Second one, NAM as part of India's foreign policy. We need to cover both. So one, when you take down regarding NAM, what are the points you can develop regarding NAM? So currently you can say recently there was the 19th NAM summit. Okay, this is just noting down whatever points you can jot down regarding NAM. So where was the 19th NAM summit? It was in Uganda. So when you take it is in Uganda. For prelims, we don't need to go through details, but we have to know what was India's major standing at 19th NAM summit. Here you can say it was attended by the Minister of External Affairs. So PM had not gone to visit. So it was S. Jaishankar. So I'm going now, I'm trying to go through backwards. Okay, through current affairs, I'm going back to the concept of NAM. So Jaishankar, and here again, if you look at some statements which were issued by the External Affairs Minister, that will give you an idea that how India is looking at NAM today. So one, the NAM leaders, including India, together they denounced Israel's offensive in Gaza. So you can, from this what we can make out, NAM is still playing a key role with respect to the moral voice of the world or something like that. Then there was also demand for global governance which is fair and equitable. Then there was also mention about terrorism. So here you can see what was the statement issued by the External Affairs Minister. He told terrorism and hostage is unacceptable. Terrorism and hostage is unacceptable. Then they also mentioned that conflict anywhere has consequence everywhere. Conflict anywhere has consequence everywhere. Then India also made a commitment under the NAM platform. So again, you can see also here India is trying to project itself as a leading power. So for example, now they have made a commitment of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra means India is saying that we are going to be the friend of the world. And you can also say that Mr. Jaishankar also called for a multipolar world order. A multipolar world order. And they also demanded for economic security. Economic security of developing countries. So here you can say still there is scope for what their goal which was there. What is that? NIEO. That is New International Economic Order. Then they also demanded for a democratization of UN. Democratization of UN. And emphasis was also given to focus on non-traditional security threats. Non-traditional security threats. So these are certain basic things you can say what India mentioned on the 19th NAM summit, recent, because sometimes in exam they've asked the recent NAM summit, directly they can ask what was India's stand here, etc. But this can also give you an idea regarding two things. One, what is India's vision of a world order? Second, it also indicates that India is no longer a rule taker, that India wants to be a rule maker, or India is asking for a greater say in the global what you can say politics. And then you can also say that India has also seen NAM as a prospect of what to bring reforms with respect to the economic structure of the world or the political structure of the world. So if you take IMF and World Bank is economic structure, and if you take UN, that can be the political structure. Now you have certain analysis here given that like what two things. One, you can say that the Prime Minister Modi had not attended the NAM summit. PM Modi had not attended the NAM summit in 2016 and 2019. He did attend the summit, the virtual summit in 2021. And you can say now in the recent summit, here you can say it was Mr. Jaishankar who attended. So what we can make out of this, especially when PM attended the NAM summit in 2021, because when he did not attend the summit in 2016 and 2019, some people said that India has now lost interest in NAM. But again, when PM attended the virtual NAM summit, now what Ashley Tellis, one of the expert, he says is, Ashley Tellis, what is his viewpoint is that he says that you should not see India's what you can say or PM's attendance of NAM through ideological tense. Means it's not that ideologically NAM is relevant. They're only looking at it from a utilitarian point of view, that what NAM platform can be used by India to promote its self what you can say projected goals or something like that. So you can say here he says that the PM's attendance of the 2021 NAM summit should not be seen through the lens of ideology, it is more utilitarian. In nature. That is one viewpoint what you can take down. The another thing what you can say means these are all random. These are not connected to 19th NAM summit. These are random viewpoints in that regard. You have one more person called as Sadanand Dhume. So he is a person who says that NAM is no longer relevant or NAM is not required. So he says that the Nehru's ghosts continues to cast shadow, continues to cast shadow over India's foreign policy instincts. So basically what he's saying that India is finding very difficult to let go of its ideological roots and try to embrace pragmatism. Then you have Ravi Shankar Kapoor. Ravi Shankar Kapoor. He says that there is a document, if you know, called as NAM 2.0. So he's critical of the NAM 2.0 document. He says that India's NAM 2.0 is a revivalist attempt. Is a revivalist attempt to bring back its what you can say ideological roots back to the foreign policy. You have Ashley Tellis, who has written a book or a work, what we can say, NAM Redux. NAM Redux. NAM Redux, the peril of old wine. In new skins. This is one of the work written by him. The NAM Redux, the peril of old wine in new skins. So he's critical of NAM 2.0 document which was brought, because NAM 2.0 they tried to revive the importance of NAM. If you take in 2008 or 2009 when the what is that? CPR, I think, the agency that is Council for Public Research or something, who brought the NAM 2.0 document. So he's critical of it. Why is critical of it? He says that NAM 2.0 betrays the reality, and it is a weak understanding of global environment. So what he is trying to say is that the document, what is the NAM 2.0, he is saying that this document itself, it does not capture the reality. It is more the point that it is more in idealism in that regard. They are not understanding the developing new world order. So he's highly critical of this NAM 2.0 document. So you can use Ashley Tellis and his book name in that regard. So these are all not structured. That's what I'm saying. These are all not structured. This is just random arrangement of points. Then you need to structure it based on what is the question they ask in the exam, where you feel which point can be used as relevant. The other thing what I want to also point out is that just don't fill in an answer with all the viewpoints. It depends upon what is the question. And at end of the day, you have to analyze the question from your point of view. But to back your point, you can use these statements or thing. But again, you have to revise this multiple times. You have to know where to fit into these statements. Then you have M.K. Narayan. Who says that means because if you look at post 1990s or 2000, India's interest in NAM has drastically declined. So he's also, again, you can say he's more of a critic of NAM. So he says that Indian foreign policy has finally got rid of the Cold War trappings. in favor of in favor of a wider engagement in favor of a wider engagement with world powers, wider engagement with world powers. So this is no, you can say it's a redefined version of NAM. Strategic autonomy is the core principle of NAM or multi-alignment. So you can say it is more of a refined form of NAM where they say multi-alignment. So now what S. Jaishankar says, the time has come for India to what you can say. It's not that we have to not engage with anybody. We have to engage with everybody based on what is our interest. So then you can also look into the other point is that now if you look into why these are all viewpoints, okay, by why there is arguments that NAM has lost its relevance, or in Indian foreign policy NAM is pushed to the periphery. What is the reason for it? So for example, see, you cannot write just viewpoints are there. You can say, see, Raja Mohan, he says that what NAM is in coma. NAM is in coma. But nobody is giving it a decent burial. Decent burial. Okay, these are all different viewpoints. This you can add here and there. But if you look at the arguments that why today we see that NAM is not relevant. Why there is a section of viewpoint that they might feel NAM is no longer relevant within Indian foreign policy. So one predominant point will be the end of Cold War, and no longer there is necessity for India to bring the balance. Second one, the rise of a unipolar world order dominated by the American hegemony. It is inevitable for India to have closer relations with US. Third, the changing geopolitical reality, that is rise of China. Has made it necessary for India to have closer relations with the West. Fourth, you can say India, certain sections of Indian policy makers also not satisfied with NAM, because you can say the NAM group was a disappointing experience, because the NAM countries, they took equidistant position in the case of India's war with China in 1962 and India's war with Pakistan, that was in 1971. Fifth, during that time, India did not have the what you can say material strength and one way practical that point of time to overcome the need of the Cold War. So NAM was needed. But today, India is projecting itself as a leading power. As M.K. Narayan has said that for India now, they have to come out of this Cold War trapping and have a greater engagement. World. Sixth, you can see Indian foreign policy has evolved towards pragmatism in that regard. And what S. Jaishankar says in India way, the India way. So he says that today what the geopolitical development it requires India is not non-alignment, but it requires multiple alignment. So he says time has come for India to manage China, engage America, reassure Russia, cultivate Europe, and bring Japan into play. So these are the arguments that can be made with regarding to what, why NAM has lost its significance with respect to the Indian foreign policy. That we already know, pragmatism, the foreign policy. The other thing you can say that some sections of Indian establishment also feel that NAM is a diverse group having diverse voices. Hence, it will be very difficult for what? To ensure that NAM can commonly represent the interests of Global South. And today, India has other platforms to project itself as the leader of Global South. So you can say G20 is there, G77 is there, and recently you can say Africa becoming part, African Union becoming part of G20 further will weaken the need of non-aligned as a platform. So these are the points, or these are the arguments what you can bring with respect to saying that why NAM in a way is becoming less relevant in Indian foreign policy. This is one aspect that you can write. Then you can go into saying that, see what I think Purva Shehzad sir is NIO parallel to Cornwall Consensus. You cannot say NIO is parallel to Cornwall Consensus. Cornwall Consensus has been brought by G7. G7 is a group of countries which represent the industrial countries of the world or the global north. So Cornwall Consensus is mainly an attempt by liberalism or neoliberalism to reform itself, since now neoliberalism has come under strains. So for example, in Cornwall Consensus, the state has to play a greater role. But Cornwall Consensus exclusively does not speak about the democratization of international institutions, etc. It's only an ideological shift that is happening. NIO is more of a structural shift, not an ideological shift, where NIO is speaking about changing the international structure and giving more voice to the global south or the developing countries. So in that regard, we cannot say that Cornwall Consensus is a parallel to NIO. NIO is mainly from the global south, and you can say the Cornwall Consensus is an attempt by the industrial countries to reform or to rescue liberalism, which is currently facing strains. Yeah, now these were the arguments where you can bring about what, why or NAM has become like what Raja Mohan told, it is in coma, etc. So when you write your viewpoint, it's not only you're adding the quotations, you have to also bring reasons or arguments. Now on the other side of the spectrum, what are the arguments that why NAM is relevant? So for example, you have people like TV Paul, Suhasini Haidar, Siddharth Vardharajan, they are all of the view that NAM is relevant, it can be reinvented. So even if you take the document NAM 2.0, it also spoke about what relevance, continued relevance of non-alignment in Indian foreign policy. So now what are the arguments for NAM's relevance? So one, though the Cold War has ended in that regard, but still there is a risk of a new Cold War emerging between China and USA. But what some question here is that, can India afford to be non-aligned when it is China and USA, because it's a different contest between being Russia and US. Second argument is that some argue that though NAM might not be relevant based on the ideas or the needs of the Cold War, but it has its own relevance in post-Cold War in terms of still NIEO, New International Economic Order, is still to be achieved. Third, it can be a platform for global South countries to address the what? Common voice with respect to climate change negotiations, the reforms of international institutions, means giving greater voice to the global South countries. Fourth, you can say, since India is aspiring to be a permanent member in UN Security Council, and for that you need to have global support, and NAM has almost 120 countries. So NAM can be a group which India can use as what? To back its membership, permanent membership in Security Council. Fifth, NAM countries can also work together with respect to addressing challenges created by these non-traditional security threats such as COVID-19, because COVID-19 had resulted in disruption of global supply chains. So that can be one of the things. So in a way, what the arguments is there, that the problem of terrorism, so you can say within UN there has been no consensus on terrorism, so NAM countries can work together, especially if India takes up the leadership, that we can build a consensus to fight global terrorism in that regard. In that way also you can say NAM can be relevant. So you can say today NAM might not be as relevant as in Cold War dynamics, where you can see in political terms, but still NAM has a social and economic and cultural collaborations that can be built. But what Suhasini Haidar, she says, but for this to happen, NAM should reinvent itself. NAM should reinvent itself. How? One, they need to have a permanent secretariat. They have to come out with a new charter that speaks about the problems of the post-Cold War, or not the Cold War problems. And India should take up the leadership to revive non-alignment by giving it a new direction. So these are the arguments what you can bring to say that how we can say that NAM can still work towards. So you can include other points also. For example, you can say points such as nuclear disarmament is also one area where NAM countries can work. And this is what even Harsh V. Pant says. Harsh V. Pant, he says, his point of view is that India cannot be non-aligned in the traditional sense. Though they can use NAM, India's utilization of NAM will be now not ideological, it will be more utilitarian. What do you mean by utilitarian? They'll make use of it when it is needed in that regard. Why he says it should be utilitarian, it can't be ideological? Because he says that given the security dynamics or security predicament, he says India cannot afford to be non-aligned in traditional sense. So that is one of the view which is given by Harshvi Pant in that regard. Now, apart from this, what other content will be required? So maybe let us take in part A, they ask about NAM as a movement, etc. So there you can say, here you have to know the non-aligned movement was a Cold War, necessity or need in that regard. And why India followed the non-aligned movement, part of this, because you can say whom we call the 5 eyes of NAM. Jawaharlal Nehru, Tito, Gamal, Abdel Nasser, Kwame Nkrumah, and Tito, Nehru, Gamal Nasser. Who else? Who is the fifth one? Sukarno of Indonesia. Okay. So here if you look at what was the meaning of NAM, Nehru gave clarity for definition of NAM, because he said NAM does not mean neutrality. Neutrality was more of a negative concept. NAM is more of a positive concept. Means neutrality signifies isolation, but NAM signifies that countries will involve in the global tensions, and they'll try to bring down the global tension, try to bring peace between the warring groups. And at this point of time, if you look at why did India adopt NAM, you can say it is both ideological reasons are there, and even you have pragmatic reasons. So ideological reasons you can bring the role of Gandhi, Nehru, the idea of ahimsa or peace. Pragmatic reasons was that one, India did not have the economic heft to participate in global politics. India had newly gained freedom, and India did not want to join this, lose this newly gained freedom, because India will, joining any bloc, will compromise on India's strategic autonomy. Then India could not join the US camp because of its geopolitical necessity. USSR is very closely located near India, and India could not join USSR because India did not believe in the idea of what? The Marxian communism. India believed in democratic socialism. And it was also pragmatic decisions in that regard. Why? Because India was able to focus more on internal development, such as what? Poverty reduction, etc. And here it was also a smart decision according to some. It was also pragmatic because India was able to get what you can say, aid from both the Soviet bloc as well as the US camp. And if you take empirical data during this period, India got more aid than Pakistan, because Pakistan was an American ally. And you can say during the 1962 war with China, US came to India's aid. and in the 1971 war with Pakistan, the USSR came to India's aid. And according to some, it also enabled India because India did not have the economic heft. So, but however, without having economic heft, India was able to use NAM as a platform to project itself, as a leader, of third world countries. So this you can speak about largely that when there are questions asked about why India adopted NAM during Cold War, was it as from an idealist viewpoint as well as from a pragmatic viewpoint? What are the different viewpoints that you can we can understand? So again here you can say what is the contribution of NAM? Contribution of NAM during the Cold War. So one contribution of NAM was that what it ensured that Cold War did not lead into what? A third World War. Second one, it promoted decolonization in number of third world countries. Third, it reduced the conflicts and global tensions. You can give examples of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Korean crisis. Fourth contribution of NAM is that it made UN more effective, which had become dysfunctional. During what? The Cold War. And NAM also led for third world countries to come on a common platform and demand for new international economic order. And NAM also gave a third way when the world was divided into two blocks. That is what? Communism and capitalism. NAM was able to give a third way for countries. And NAM also brought together the Afro-Asia unity. But at the same time, you also have to know what are the failures of NAM or what are the limitations of NAM. So NAM faced a lot of criticism at ideological level because the Western scholars, they criticized NAM as what? They told it was not NAM, it was double alignment. And the other criticism of NAM was also, it was internally divided. And that is why you can say NIEO, the new international economy, did not succeed. Why? Because some were proxies of the US camp, some were proxies of the communist camp, and some were genuinely non-aligned movement. And they did not speak in a single voice. For example, you can give the NAM countries were divided also, not only on ideological grounds, but also on religious grounds. So you can say there was block within blocks. So for example, Islamic bloc was a separate bloc within the non-aligned movement. So you can say none of them supported India with respect to its Kashmir issue. So you can say this was the other weakness of the NAM countries. And the other bigger problem is the group was too big. And obviously building decisions was always difficult because lack of consensus. So these are the broad ideas that if you have from an exam point of view, that will enable you to write answers in the exam. So now let us look at certain questions which have come on NAM and try to answer the questions based on the concepts we know. So let's take the recent questions on NAM. So let us take 2020 question which is there. Discuss the ways to strengthen the non-aligned movement to enable it to address the challenges faced by developing countries. Challenges faced by developing countries. So this was for 20 marks. So how will you address the demand of this question, and what exactly is the demand of the question here? Why will you write limitation of NAM? So first you will write introduction about, okay, what is non-aligned movement? Okay, then first you have to tell what are the challenges faced by developing countries today. First you have to mention what challenges: climate change, the role of multinational companies in that regard, or problem of terrorism, non-traditional security threats, pandemic COVID-19, how it has disrupted the global supply chains. Then you have to tell, to address these challenges, NAM can be an effective tool. But however, currently NAM is facing certain problems. So here you have to write, it has lost its relevance, because there is a reason saying that post-Cold War, NAM has become irrelevant. Why? Because it will no longer the world there. But now these non-traditional security threats indicate that what NAM can play a key role. Or second one you can say, because NAM is internally divided, they are not able to speak in single voice. Third one, NAM does not have a charter that addresses the problems of the present world order. So in this regard, NAM should undergo certain changes. Now what changes? One, you can say NAM should first have a permanent secretariat. Second one, they have to redefine their charter. Third, what else can be done? So they are asking, discuss the ways to strengthen non-aligned movement. When because every 3 years NAM summits have been held. So obviously now, what is the problem with NAM summits is that many times they are speaking the same thing which other things also speaking, like G20, G77. So they have to ensure that there is no overlap of NAM's functioning with functioning of other groups. So NAM's identity should be redefined, means exactly where NAM can focus its energy upon. Fourth, the more developed countries within NAM, what do you call, among developing countries which are more developed, they first have to provide what? Unilateral concessions. Unilateral concessions to the weaker members in NAM. So this will lead to what? Trust building among NAM countries, and that will make the NAM organizations more effective. Fifth, they'll have to identify first what are the common issues or the most important. Like you have this functionalist approach now. What is functionalist approach? First identify low politics and high politics. So which are less controversial. Give more emphasis for resolving the low politics, then move towards high politics. This will ensure that what? NAM can reinvent. So in this regard, you can use in your conclusion that India today is looking at NAM in order to what? In order to be a platform which can, as PM Modi said in the 2021 NAM summit, that NAM continues to be the moral voice of the world. Moral voice of the world. So this is how I would structure my answer. So here the key aspect was that you have to write what that has to be done in order to make sure NAM can reinvent itself. So I spoke about 3 to 4 measures that can be done. Having a permanent secretariat, new charter, trying to build consensus, focus on low politics. The more developed countries in NAM, they have to give unilateral concession to lesser weaker countries in NAM. That will lead to trust building in that regard. And try to ensure that where there is overlapping of functioning, that is segregated. So NAM can exclusively focus on certain areas rather than focusing in other areas where other groups are dealing with. So again I told, this is the difference. The difference is that now what you read in theory, what they ask in exam, it not always be the same. You cannot just say that, okay, I read in my notes, I'll go right. You can't. You have to be able to generate points on the spot. Okay. And how you can remember, you have to, that's what we think, brainstorming, thinking. So then you will be able to generate more number of points. And of course, here and there we can use to write what is NAM, okay, what are the issues plaguing in the developing countries or global south. Then why or how NAM can be reinvented. So this can be the answer to your question. So any doubt here? So that's what I told. It's more important that you address the demand of the question rather than just writing viewpoints. You cannot just write viewpoints. This fellow told that, that fellow told. You have to bring concrete points saying that how NAM should be reinvented or reformed. So let us take one more question. It was asked in 2018. Discuss the significance. Discuss the significance. Discuss the significance of non-aligned movement. Of non-aligned movement as a unique contribution of the non-Western world, to the world politics. Non-Western world to the world politics. So this was asked in 2018. It was asked for 20 marks. If you read the question again, you will be able to understand the demand of the question. Then you will be able to formulate your ideas that what you can write. So they are asking, discuss Asking discuss the significance of NAM as a unique contribution. The keyword is unique contribution of the non-Western countries to the world politics. So they are asking, so how will you write the answer, or what are the points that you can generate here, or how will you structure your answer? Yes, online students can also type in your points, that what you are able to recall here. What exactly is the demand here? The keywords are significance, unique contribution of non-Western world to world politics. Okay, first you are going to tell what is non-aligned movement. Or instead of defining NAM in introduction, you can bring under what context NAM came. So you can say the post Second World War, the world got divided into two blocks, that is the Soviet camp and the capitalist camp, and followed by the process of decolonization of many third world countries. This resulted in third world countries coming together to form non-aligned movement. Then what will you write? So Shivani says that it prevented Cold War from turning to hot war, promoting multilateralism. So you can come to that, but you can say what is its unique contribution. It's not only contribution, what is so unique in their contribution. So one unique in the contribution is that the first thing, till the Second World War, the world was defined through the lens of the global north. International politics was dominated by global north. It was more Eurocentric. But NAM, it brought into forum the Afro and Asian value system, and hence they said the communism and capitalism in totality will not be suitable for the third world countries, and many times they mooted their own form of what? Socialism, or a third way, or a third path. Then they also gave a new interpretation, and they said NAM should not be seen as neutrality, but they told NAM is going to contribute to what? Reducing global tensions and contributing to global peace. Third, the third world countries, especially like India, were able to use NAM's platform and contributed to what? Decolonization and freedom of many third world countries. Fourth, they also contributed for demanding a new international economic order, because the economic order till then was defined according to the needs of the first world and the second world, but now they demanded the economic order according to the needs of the third world. Then Purva Saharan, as you can say, now she said the Bandung's spirit, NAM is just not neutrality but interest-based alliance. Good point, that is. And you can say they also provided the voice Ubuntu, that is voice of, in South Africa I can say, this Ubuntu, what you can say, model, which means that all coming together collectively. So you can say they gave a platform to be the voice of global south. Sixth, they also revived the dysfunctional UN and made UN more effective, and they were in successful. Purva has a doubt is that NIO has roots of NAM first or G77. You can say G77 is also there, but NIEO has more roots to non-aligned movement rather than G77. G77 appeared much later. Then any other point that you can generate? So for example, you can say now in NAM countries also redefined politics, not only in terms of power politics, they also prescribed values. For example, Gandhian values such as ahimsa, and this led towards what they called for nuclear disarmament, arms control, which were very essential for what? The developing countries. Because for developing countries, development was more important than power politics. Or politics. Anything else what you can write? Because already you have generated 7 points, that what is the unique contribution of non-Western to world politics. Then you can also say, you can add, even because we don't need to write only about Cold War, you can also speak about now. Now you can also say NAM along with these G77 countries are also demanding climate justice. In terms of what? CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities. They have brought the idea of equity rather than equality. So then in your answer you can say, though the end of Cold War has raised questions about relevance of NAM, but you can say if NAM is able to reinvent itself, as Prime Minister Modi has said, NAM can continue to be the moral voice of the world. So these are the points that you can generate for this question. Discuss the significance of non-aligned movement as a unique contribution of the non-Western world to world politics. So basically you have to tell, in world politics was dominated by the Western world, and the Western world had defined politics in how they wanted, and how NAM, it redefined the world politics according to the needs and necessities of the third world countries or the developing countries. Similarly, you have one more question which they have asked, is that, means this you don't need to write, just look into. Do you endorse the view that the end of bipolarity and the rise of multiple regional organizations has made NAM less relevant, has made it less relevant, and they're asking you to comment on it. So how will you approach this question? Do you endorse the view that the end of bipolarity, so one keyword is this, end of bipolarity. The other keyword is that rise of multiple regional organizations. So what they are telling is that NAM was more as a necessity when the world was divided into two blocks during Cold War. Now since the bipolarity has ended, we are living in a unipolar world, which is the rise of American hegemony. So they are asking you that with rise of American hegemony, there is no need of balancing that is required. And second one, there are other regional groupings which have emerged. Now you have I2, U2, G20, G77, you have BRICS. So they are saying that multiple existence of groups. In what ways it has, because many of these groups are dealing with the same issues what NAM also deals with. So they are asking that, do you think this has weakened NAM? So in your answer you need to explain. First you need to explain this part, the shift from bipolarity to unipolarity, how it has weakened NAM. Second part, you can give examples here for multiple regional organizations like G20, now Africa becoming part of it, it has naturally weakened the agenda of NAM. Or you can say now the new international economic order is also demanded by G77 countries, or it is also demanded by G20 countries. Or today you can say G20 is a culmination of developed and developing countries on the same platform. Or you have countries like BRICS, etc., are also leading the agenda of reforming international economic institution. G4, which is there, which is demanding for reform of UNSC. So in this regard, there is a crisis of identity of NAM, that what NAM exactly should deal with. So however you can say that in spite of all these limitations, NAM can be relevant for to India or to the world if it is able to, same points what you read, it is able to reinvent itself. So first it can focus on certain areas. For example, how G20, G77 do not have the number of countries what NAM has. Second one, NAM is more broader in its geographical representation. It includes Latin America, Africa, Asia at large. And the third reason is that even though we have a unipolar world, we can say that American hegemony or America should not be allowed to dominate. For that you can use bandwagoning approach where NAM can do soft balancing of US. Or we can say the world is no longer unipolar, the world is moving towards, again, what you can say, not multipolar, you can say it is more about less clarity where the world is going through. And the rise of China has raised the questions again of the need of strategic autonomy or non-alignment. So that argument you have to bring in your answer. But first part of your answer you have to explain that how shift from bipolarity to unipolarity and how rise of parallel organizations in that regard, in what ways it has weakened NAM. Then second part of the answer you have to tell why still you can feel that in some ways NAM can be still relevant, where it can be still relevant from both perspectives. You need to write your answer. So that's why I told every NAM question what is there, it is not the same. You need to redefine your answer based on your understanding of what exactly the question they are asking. If you are not able to redefine, but again if you write general points in that regard, then you can say marks won't come. So you have Purva Saharan who says that in Asia, two tigers are still under security dilemma. Bipolar come multipolar world. Okay, that is correct. Then you can say only if change in structure and scope. Okay. NAM as an idea of interest-based alliances holds relevance. Its spirit holds countries together while having varied interests. These points are all correct, but you need to mold these points according to the demand of the question. So when you are making a point, when you are saying NAM is relevant, so you have to bring a point, okay, even if there is G20, even if there is G77, even if there is a G4, or you have SARC, ASEAN, why does NAM become relevant? Because it has 120 countries, it has a wider geographical representation, and obviously having more number of countries will have a greater voice of the global south. So in that regard, you can bring one point that why it might be relevant even if there are multiple group. The counterpoint to that, many say that because NAM is such a huge group, so consensus cannot be built. So it is much easier to work through smaller organization like G20 or G77. So you have to bring both positive and negative angle in your answer. So you can bring arguments, but you have to make sure that you are addressing the demand of the question. So first half you have to write the answer. What is the problem with arisal of multi regional organizations? Then you also have to separately say shift from bipolarity to unipolarity, that how it has weakened NAM. Then you have to bring how now, even though there is unipolar world, still there is focus for bandwagoning, still there is focus of soft balancing of US. NAM can play a key role, or still you can say unipolar world is moving towards what you can say flux, means the world order is changing, but nobody knows what the world order looks like. So you can say the rise of China in that regard, it again signifies the importance of NAM. And again, then you bring points for what? Even though there are multiple organizations, how NAM, because of its greater representation, how it can be a more collectivized, provided if it is able to reinvent itself and reform itself. So that should be more or less the answer what you have to write in the exam. Understood? Any doubt? So that's why I told, for every question, when you read the question, you need to understand what is the demand of the question. If you are able to identify the demand of the question through the keywords mentioned in the question, it becomes much simpler for you to what? Write the answers. Now let us look into certain Cold War questions. That is what? Cold War, collapse of Soviet Union, American hegemony in that regard. So let us look what questions has there here. Okay, take down this question. Critically examine, critically examine critically examine the decline of USA as a hegemon, and its implication implications for changing international political order. Changing international political order. So this was asked in 2021 for 15 marks. So what is the key demand of the question here? What are the keywords that you will have to know? So okay, Purva has a question. Question: do we show coexistence of NAM with mini alliances, or say that multipolarity could lead to multiple dilemmas? So it is the second part. See, you can write both. So one, when you bring an argument where saying that multipolarity could lead to multiple dilemmas, that is one argument you can write. So instead of NAM can be a better platform. And second, also you can write that instead of writing NAM coexisting with mini alliances, you can say that multipolarity could lead to multiple dilemmas. Hence, having a common platform that would make a NAM a better platform to deal with these issues rather than the mini alliances. So second point what you told, that would be more relevant, Purva. Now, how will you answer this question? Critically examine the decline of US as a hegemon. So, two parts. First, you have to speak about the decline of US as a hegemon. Second part, its implications on the international political order. So there are two parts in the question. So how will you start your answer? What will be your introduction? What will be your introduction? So you can say, with the end of the Cold War, with the disintegration of Soviet Union, America emerged as the sole superpower, and this was the beginning of the Pax Americana, which led to the establishment of a neo-liberal world order. Then they're asking you to critically examine the decline of the American hegemony. Okay, Purva Saran says Farid Zakaria, decline of the West, rise of the rest. So you can write the decline of the West, rise of the rest, Farid Zakaria, but you need to give reasons why. See, just adding viewpoints without explaining will not add value to the answer. Now, first start with main point. You can say the American decline can be analyzed on two respective. One, the external factors, and second one is the internal factors. So they're asking you to analyze, right? So if to analyze, you can say there are two factors that has contributed to the American decline. That is the external factors and the internal factors. So don't just add viewpoints. Farid Zakaria said rise of the West. Okay, why? How? So if you are going to speak of the decline of American hegemony, first you have to know what are the pillars of strength of the American hegemony, where they are seeing a decline. So when you look at the external factors in that regard, one, you can say the rise of China, the economic strength of China. Second factor is what? Forget about direct. Tell what are the external factors that has weakened the American hegemony. So I can say there are challenges to the rise of countries, like you told, BRICS. Now you bring what Farid Zakaria says, the rise, or sorry, what is it? Decline of the West and rise of the others. You can means here only you include BRICS countries are asking, they've established new development bank, they are speaking about de-dollarization of the world. Third, what is that third? The American exit from Afghanistan, Iraq is a reflection. Vietnam is old, Vietnam was before, was a weakening of the American. It shows that what American strength to a certain extent has weakened. So here you can link this theory where you can say a superpower or the hegemonic stability theory. Charles Kindle work, who says that what? A hegemon, when it overextends itself, overstretches itself, it is bound to become weak. Then see, external factor, failure of Vietnam War. Vietnam War was before, it was not, it was during the Cold War. Yes, you no, see that point you write in a different way. Rise of non-state actors. the rise of non-state actors such as Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and their ability to hit the American heartland, 9/11 attack. Fifth, the globalization in the second half has favored newer markets like China and India, where today you can see jobs have shifted to these countries, and this enabled the economic rise of these two countries, which at the same time led to the decline of the American economy. Sixth, now you can say the growing nexus between Russia and China, and you can also say America's non-involvement, not direct involvement in the Ukraine war. It also reflects the limitation of the American military prowess. Okay, power transition theory Organsky can be used to explain how certain years a new actor emerges as a revisionist force. Yeah, but you need to write how they emerge as a revisionist, but how it is weakening the American hegemony. Instead of that, write more better points, like saying that seventh one, America is now the America ruled also world through their values. Today, the American values are facing crisis. You can bring Samuel Huntington. The clash of civilization. The rejection of the American values in Islamic countries, etc. Eighth, now instead of eighth you can go, what are the internal factors which has weakened America? So you can say within America, you can say they face internal constraint. What are the internal constraint? For example, growing social movements in America because of increasing inequality, Occupy Wall Street movement, etc., has weakened the American model, that is what Washington consensus which was there, and today countries are looking towards a new model called as what? Beijing consensus. Then you can also say rise of Trump, and what Farid Zakaria calls as the rise of illiberal democracy has dented American soft power. And you can say the 2008 financial crisis has limited America's ability to play the role of what? A global policeman. Yeah, you can say protectionism, etc. No, you write this much enough. No, because you can't go on writing. Write some 5 to 6 external factors, 3 to 4 internal factors which has weakened the American hegemony. But then you can also have to write in the second part of the answer, what is the implications? They are asking what is the implications on changing international political order. So what is the implications of the weakening American hegemony? Now first you tell, like, how do you put that formation of regional groupings is implication, like what is the main point? So you can say, since America's position as a global policeman has weakened, so this has led to what? Weakening of multilateralism. Weakening of multilateralism, and you can say rise of minilaterals. Second one, now the legitimacy of neoliberal institutions. Neoliberal institutions are facing crisis. For example, WTO is come, or you can say China now violating UN Convention on Laws of Seas. Third, this has also moved dead for what? The decline of the America's nuclear umbrella. And this is going for what? More number of countries moving towards for what? They need security, right? So this is leading towards arms race. Then you can say Japan flipped from pacifism towards more arms thing. Then you can also say there are certain proponents who say the weakening of American hegemony, like you have the that's done weakening of multilateral point. Not like that. Instead of you can write there is the proponent of Thucydides trap. Graham Allison. At what? When there is a rising power and when there is a declining power, there is a possibility a war can break out between China and US. Yeah, what was the point you said? So you can say because of America's decline of weakening of power, now you can say there was collapse of political stability in countries like Afghanistan, which created vacuum to be occupied by Taliban, which has led to increased drug trafficking, human trafficking, violation of human rights. Then we can see the world order now is in a flux. Means what? It is shifting from a unipolar to more of a towards a multipolar world order. And Satyam Tripathi saying that new economic architecture like AIB and NDB. Yeah, you can say the other positive implication is also there. The weakening of American hegemony has allowed the third world countries to come out with a new economic architecture. Architecture such as the NDB, AIB, and because of America's decline of abilities, so okay, showing you chances of spreading autocratic regimes in Asia and Africa, threat to democracy. Yes, that point we have covered. Because of the American vacuum, you can say there is a political instability, and that can give vacuum to authoritarian leaders. So then, what you can conclude your answer now? Because implications you have written a lot. So what is the what is the thing you can say? So you can say still there is debate among scholars whether the American power has really declined. For some say the American power is declining, but some do not agree that China has risen to an extent that they can still challenge the American hegemony. Or scholars such as Susan Strange say American hegemony cannot be seen as a single block. It should be seen in different sectors. So according to her, the American economic power has declined and the American ideological power has seen a dent, but still America continues to be the preponderant power in terms of military and technological capabilities. So you can use the view of Susan Strange as your conclusion. So you get a point. So you might get a lot of points here to write, but it's more important that how do you structure your points. Second one, don't just add concepts like rise of the West. You have to give examples. When you say rise of the rest, decline of the West, how? Farid Zakaria has said it, no doubt, but how? Or when you are speaking about the chances of the Thucydides traps, Graham Allison in that regard, you have to be able to link because the American is seeing a decline, China is seeing a rise. So there is a chances that war can break out. Or weakening of multilateralism, give examples for it. Dysfunction of WTO, or you can say more number of minilaterals are being found. Why? Because the neoliberal world order is weakening. So here it's more about how do you structure and organize your points rather than just linking theories. So you want, yeah, you have. Could we say that India has a capacity and capability we can diamond slowly mention? No, that will be a far fetched. Don't go into here telling that India will replace America or etc. You can say a decline of American hegemony brings two things. It can be also an opportunity for the third world countries to build a new economic architecture which is more favorable to them. But here that don't go into like India will replace America. That is a very far stretched point. Just stick to what is the implications of the decline of the American hegemony. So these are the different dimensions that you can look at. Okay. Here and there I told Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization can be linked. Farid Zakaria's Rise of Illiberal Democracy can be linked. So it's better way to structure your answer saying that external factors, internal factors, then what is the implications? Then conclude your answer by saying that what Susan Strange brings the argument that the American hegemony taking a decline can't be seen as a unified block, it has to be seen in different sectors. So that you can use as your conclusion. So this was one of the question they asked, and it's a repeated question. If you see again in 2013, they have told identify the challenges to the American hegemony. Again, it will be almost the same points. Then they have told discuss the collapse of Soviet Union and its impact on international politics. So let us look at this question. The question is discuss the collapse. Discuss the collapse. Discuss the collapse of Soviet Union. Of the Soviet Union. Soviet Union and its impact on international politics. So this was asked in 2015 for 15 marks. So it's a 15 marker question. So in how many minutes you have to write your answer? 12 minutes. So it's currently the time now is 7:04. So I'll give you exactly 12 minutes to write the answer. 7:16. Once you write the answer, then we'll discuss that. So even the online students can start writing. In 12 minutes, you have to write the answer for this question. Just try to write what you can think. Then we'll look at what is the structure. So your time starts now. Online students should also write. You have 9 more minutes. Eight more minutes. 5 more minutes. Four more minutes. You have last 3 minutes. Last 60 seconds. Time up. So you can stop writing. So now if you look into the question, there are two parts to the question. One, you have to discuss the collapse of Soviet Union. basically means you have to explain why Soviet Union collapsed. Second part of the question is that you have to discuss its impact on international politics. So, what can be the introduction you can write for this question? So, one you can say, according to Putin, the collapse of Soviet Union, collapse of Soviet Union was one of the biggest geopolitical disasters. What he refers it. Why you will go into that? That you write what is an implication. When you say an implication, you can speak out end of history. Why you are going into introduction? Introduction, you can say the collapse of Soviet Union, according to Putin, is one of the greatest geopolitical disasters. Or you can say the Cold War, which started in 1917, saw demise with the collapse of Soviet Union in 1990s. Or you can say the breakdown of the Berlin Wall signified the collapse of Soviet Union. Something you can write like that. So then you have to go into saying that the reasons that why Soviet Union collapsed, why there was the collapse of Soviet Union that led to the end of Cold War. So one, there can be different theories that can explain it. So one theory says that USSR found its own death. In that regard, their own policies led to decline of USSR. So second theory says that you can say the policies brought by the US President Reagan in that regard. Third, the policies brought by Gorbachev, that is the USSR President. So here, what is the one thing? One, geographical limitations of USSR, which was there, because the geographical location of USSR compels USSR to expand for their survival, but if they go for expansion, it leads to overstretch. So it's a geopolitical factor. Second, you can say Reagan, he brought policies which weakened or made USSR to compete with USA, such as beggar thy neighbor, depressed oil prices, because Russia's main source of income is oil exports in that regard. Then you can say star wars, costly arms race, and you can say made USSR bait and bleed with respect to their Afghan invasion. Then you can say the policies of Gorbachev, on the other hand, also led to the decline of or demise of USSR. One, you can say that he tried to bring certain reforms such as perestroika and glasnost. So I can say perestroika means opening of the economy. That led to what? That led to shortage of essential items, crony capitalism. Glasnost basically limited freedom to people. It acted as a pressure cooker syndrome, and this led to what? The collapse of the periphery states in Soviet Union. And you can also say there were economic factors which led to decline of USSR, such as centralized bureaucratic system suffering from red tapeism and corruption in that regard. And USSR also had to have huge financial implications because they had to support the puppet regimes which were there. And there were also natural causes that also led to weakening of Soviet Union. So during the collapse here, you can say they also had a massive earthquake and the Chernobyl incident in 1986. All these factors contributed to the decline of Soviet Union. So first part of the question, you have addressed it. Can we introduce with Gorbachev reforms and collapse? So instead of introducing with Gorbachev reforms, first tell, give a broader outview, say that the Cold War, which started with the Russian Revolution in 1917, saw a demise with the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s. Then go into saying that what factors have got you bring down. Three theories are broadly there. One, Soviet Union bled its own death. Second one, the policies of Reagan. Third one is policies of Gorbachev. Then you have economic factors at play. Then you have natural disasters at play. Now, second part of the question, they are asking what is the implication of the disintegration of Soviet Union. So one you can say the world order shifted from a bipolar world order you can shift to a unipolar world order. Now you can say at ideological level also, now you bring your point, what is that? Francis Fukuyama gave the end of history thesis. Now claiming what? Now neoliberal economy became the part of global economic structure. Third, this led to rise of a neoliberal world order with America becoming the what? The global policeman. NAM also faced existential crisis. Existential crisis. Fifth, now international institutions such as UN, they came under the American influence in that regard. Now you can say many international institutions such as UN, etc., in a way also weakened. Why? Example you can say America's unilateral invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan. Not like that. They are asking collapse of Soviet Union led to what? Collapse of Soviet Union, there was no other power which could limit America. Now America dominated the international institutions. They now what you can say did not abide by UN in that regard because now they became more powerful. Then you can say though the interstate wars declined, intrastate wars saw an increase because the American involvement, or you can say what promotion of proxy wars in different part. So this led to what? This led to increase civil wars. Don't go into too much of democracy, but you can say democracy promotion that led to what? Problem. No, that you already did now. End of history thesis, more number of countries. No, right. Collapse of Soviet Union, it led to expansion of NATO. Many former, what you can say, members of Warsaw, now they joined the NATO camp in that regard. Eighth one, now you can say there was also increase in number of global agreements that were signed. For example, UN Convention of Laws of Seas, START, Arms Reduction Treaty, which is a continuation of SALT, because now Russia went into detente with USA. So you can say now the American security architecture became predominant. Now many countries wanted to bandwagon the US because obviously there is no alternative now because there is no USSR. see, you can tell that indirectly. The main point is that what collapse of Soviet Union brought in international order. You are speaking about what does rise of America did to the international order. Question is not what rise of America. Rise of America is a consequence of collapse of Soviet Union. So what was the collapse of Soviet Union immediate impact in the international order? Okay, point. Now the Americans started focusing on what? Because the decline of Soviet Union in that regard, obviously in communist countries, there was a lot of political instabilities where in Central Asia, and this gave space for what? This gave space for non-state actors to rise. So now, yeah, now we can use Putin's statement as the conclusion instead of introduction. What I told that Vladimir Putin considers the disintegration of Soviet Union is one of the greatest geopolitical disasters, or something like that. Now word focus shifted towards development, liberal. Yeah, see, liberal institution all one point. When you write WTO, you don't repeatedly write IMF, WTO, only one point. Liberal institution was one point. Now UN becoming weaker or UN becoming a proxy of America is the other point. And you can say a decline of NAM or existential question or non-aligned movement. World order shifting from bipolar to unipolar. Okay. So these are the points that you can include in your answer when you're speaking about what is the impact of decline of Soviet Union or disintegration of Soviet Union on international or global politics. So any other doubt? Your point. So see, almost all these questions like Cold War or the American hegemony, they're all interconnected or interrelated. Okay, it's not separate. Cold War, American hegemony. So if you see, most of the questions here are pretty straightforward and are pretty easy to write. So again, you can say they've asked the positive and negative impact of Soviet Union's disintegration on developing nations. One more year. So again, first to tell what is Soviet disintegration of Soviet Union, 3 or 4 points. What is the positive impact? You can say world order became liberal institutions became strong, democracy, more number of countries went to a democratic path, well functioning of international institutions, and third one, it also reduced the proxy wars, because when USSR was there was proxy wars fought between. But however, again, what you can say negative impact, the America became the dominant power. Now you can say many countries are forced to follow one model of economic growth. So that led to economic crisis, right? Asian economic crisis, what happened. Or you can also say because now Russia became very weak, countries like India had to now go take loans from IMF, etc. And for some countries they got entangled in what? Debt trap, or what you can say. Or third, we can say disintegration of Soviet Union, because when Soviet Union was there in Central Asia, they had some kind of political control. Now this led to space for what? Drug trafficking, human trafficking, rise of non-state actors, which has impacted developing countries at large. So try to generate more number of points based on here. Thinkers and all is not important. For these kind of questions, it's not important how many scholars you write or how many thinkers you write. You have to think from dimensions, think from more number of dimensions. What is the political dimension? What is the social dimension? What is the economic dimension? What is the cultural dimension? What is the technological dimension? What is the strategic dimension? What is the defense dimension? Now you can say many countries before they had the option of buying weapons from even from USSR. Now America became one of the most important defense supplier. Historical dimension, right? And you can also take which other dimension is there? Ethical angle, international institutions. So develop certain keywords, trying to think on those lines, you will be able to generate more number of points and have a good introduction and a good conclusion for most of the questions. That would be more than enough to answer questions like this. So here don't worry about which scholar you are using, etc. That would not be important. Sir, if the question would be like especially impact on India, then what should be our approach? Yeah, speak from India's point of view. Now, disintegration of Soviet Union, India's position now became very precarious. Why now India's policy, non-alignment, started shifting towards what bandwagoning approach. India became much closer to US in that regard. India's relation with Israel also improved. India's foreign policy was no longer now ideal, it became pragmatic. India's relation with America improved post the disintegration of Soviet Union. India brought diversification of its defense needs because they understood disintegration of Soviet Union. We cannot depend only on Russia. They tried to diversify their defense needs. India also brought liberalization, privatization and globalization in that regard. India also now started to look east because they understood we cannot just look west because the crisis what the disintegration of Soviet Union brought. So these are the things that you can say. Now it's simple. That's why I told. IR is no different. Focus exactly what they're asking about. What you can say, the demand of the question. So if they ask with respect to what is the impact on Indian foreign policy, try to cover the same angle: economical, cultural, defense, social, technological. Same thing. Now what is the other thing? So keywords in IR. Remember. Certain keywords will be then a strategic dimension, defense dimension, political dimension. So how disintegration of Soviet Union had an impact on Indian foreign policy. So any doubt for the online students? Satyam or Shivani? Nikki is saying why? I didn't understand the question. Okay. So any other doubt here in this part? So now let's move on to one more set of areas where questions have come. This we look into like these international institutions which are there. Largely this is one more area questions have repeatedly come. So when you look at international institutions, you don't need to study all the institutions. Major ones you have to know, such as UN, IMF and World Bank. They have not asked separately. They are usually asked as Bretton Woods conference, the neoliberal institutions. Then International Court of Justice is one more common theme they have asked. Then now this year they can ask about International Criminal Court. It has been in seen in news. So largely when you look at international institutions, broadly these institutions have been asked. Very rarely they have asked about ILO or what you can call WHO, etc. So if you see most of the questions here in international institutions, largely they have asked on this UN, and largely they have asked on one more thing is WTO, World Trade Organization. And what else is there? Yeah, the other keyword is this closely associated with these topics only is NIEO, Washington Consensus. Also remember Beijing Consensus. Also remember Cornwall Consensus. Means the idea here is that these are all not structured. You have to broadly know. And again, you don't need to know them in detail. You have to just have a broader idea how to analyze this stuff. If the question would like, sir, okay, we are still free riders of the global world. Okay, if there is a question, why would be our approach? So next you take down here, we have to look into how to approach these kind of questions, international institutions. So for this, you'll have to know what areas they've asked the general question. Already the structure of these questions have been largely, what are their objectives, structure, their contribution, and largely what are the limitations, or what we can call criticism, right? Then you will also have to know way forward, what reforms can be brought regarding institutions, any kind of global institutions. If you take, this is one broad questions and where the areas of the questions have come. But to answer this question, what content we can have? So obviously for here, this part, we need to connect with part B also. It's not that part A and part B are separate. Same thing if now add India into the equation, obviously the questions will be India and UN. India stand in WTO. India stand in IMF, or what is India's role in bringing IMF and World Bank reforms? Or India and NAM. So here it is complementary. And now here what we need to know to write an answer. So one theoretical framework we have to know. So the theoretical framework here remains, if you look at realism or realist school of thought, usually they are critical of what? The international institutions, because they say international institutions like Hobbesian view, they are nothing but covenant without swords are nothing but words. This is one theoretical framework. And they say the powerful countries in the world, they'll only ready to participate in international organization as long as they have a relative gain. So realist framework is highly pessimistic about international institutions organization because they believe that states are the principal actors. And here again you can link, they believe that world works in a billiard board model. Alfred Wolfers, Arnold Wolfers. Then if you look at from the liberal perspective, they have more of a optimistic viewpoint about international institutions, because again you have connected here Immanuel Kant, Woodrow Wilson, Nehru. So liberal institutionalism, they believe that international organizations do play a key role, they contribute to peace building efforts. Yeah, you can say they lead to economic interdependence. They also contribute to the development of a cob web model, means multiple sources where interaction can happen between countries. So they have strong faith in international institutions, have the ability to bring peace to the world, etc. Then you have Marxist perspective. Usually what is Marxist perspective? They say most of the international institutions, they reflect the interests of the capitalist class in the global north. So usually you can say, they say these international institutions are the vehicles through which neo-imperialism is promoted. So here you can have Immanuel Wallerstein's systems approach, A.G. Frank dependency theory, Robert Cox, who speaks about how these institutions promote the American hegemony, etc. Then you can have a feminist perspective, who largely say, you know, like you have scholars such as J.N. Tickner, Cynthia Enlow, Catherine, Moon, who largely argue that what international institutions or international organizations reflect patriarchal attitudes. Why they reflect patriarchal attitudes? Because they are dominated by men. They have acquired the characteristics of men. They speak about women are invisible, in international politics. So they speak about what largely most of the international institutions are headed by men. Women have very little representation. So that is largely a feminist perspective. If you know these perspectives, that is more than enough. Or you can bring a post-colonial perspective. Again, it speaks about these these institutions are all designed to meet the interest of the European countries, not the Asian countries, etc. So these are the perspectives that you can use to write your answer. Then when you take UN, so broadly what will be asked? One, they're asking about reforms. Second one, they're asking about UN peacekeeping forces. Or third, they're asking about relevance of UN. Or they're also asking about the structure and functioning of the UN. Or when we look at part B, specifically they're asking, do you think India will get, a permanent membership in UN Security Council? And here you can have a good introduction and a good conclusion. And keywords should be always there. Okay, liberal institutionalism, or you can say you have Dag Hammarskjöld. Who said UN was created not to take us to heaven, but to prevent us from going to hell. So these kind of quotes there are there. So obviously now based on these content, you will have to look to what you can say, address the demand of the question based on what questions they have asked in recent years. So let us look at few questions on this UN to get an idea that how we will be able to structure the answers. So let us take 2021 question they have taken, or 31. Discuss the significance and the urgency of UN Security Council reforms. Explain the relevance of the reform proposals made by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The relevance of UN reforms proposed by Antonio Guterres. So how will you answer this question? What will you take down here? So for this you mainly need to know, first of all, what are the key areas of reforms that has been proposed by Antonio Guterres. So first you take down this part, what are the key areas that is proposed for reforms. So take down, first you take down the content, then we look at the answer. Antonio Guterres has proposed that the important goal in 21st century, for UN is to focus more on people, and less on process. More on delivery, and less on bureaucracy. Then you take down, he has proposed three important areas of reforms. Three important areas of reforms. One is peace and security. Second is management. Third is development. Under peace and security, take down the subpoints. What is certain reforms has been proposed? One, to enhance the effectiveness and the coherence. And coherence of peacekeeping operations. And to move towards a single integrated peace and security pillar. A single integrated peace and security pillar. Then you can take second, what is proposed here is that to bring these reforms, to create new departments, and to follow one regional approach. What do you mean by one regional approach? Like when they are doing peacekeeping operations, right? They cannot use the same strategy everywhere. They have to develop strategy according to region, like Africa or Latin America in that regard. One regional approach. Then he is also proposed for joint leadership. and enhancing the capacity of the peacekeeping forces, enhancing the capacity of peacekeeping forces. Means currently there is lack of clarity between peacekeeping and peace building. So what he's proposed, that first point is there now. What is that? New department means he's telling create two new departments doing separate functions. So which are the two new departments taken on? One is the Department of Peacekeeping Operations. One is the Department of Peacekeeping Operations. The other is Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs. Political and Peace Building Affairs. Then you take down, he's also proposed 8 new regional divisions. 8 new regional divisions and the whole structure should be supported by administrative services. The whole structure should be supported by administrative services. Next to take down under management reforms. Under management reforms. So he says that under the new management structure, means here we are speaking management means that UN Secretariat office which is there, the new management structure for the UN Secretariat, that is emphasized on simplification of the process, increased transparency, and empowering and capacity building, of the staff, and is also emphasized on delegation of authority for decentralizing decision making. Delegation of authority for decentralizing decision making. And is also proposed to create a new department, that is the Department of Operational Support. Proposed a new department, that is the Department of Operational Support. Which will provide the operational support to the UN Secretariat and its entities globally. It will provide support to the UN Secretariat and its entities globally. And there is also Department of Management Strategy, Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance. and compliance, which will focus on intergovernmental and interagency relations. Intergovernmental and interagency relations. So one proposal what he has proposed is what? Peacekeeping operations. He has proposed 2 new departments, and he told regional divisions have to be established and regional peacekeeping operation plans should be developed. You can't go with one size fits all approach. Second, what he has also said, you have to divide their peacekeeping and peace building. They have to be managed differently. And with respect to management of UN Secretariat, what he has told, you have to go for delegated authority, simplification of process, training of the human resource what they have, and also he has spoken about 2 new departments which can bring, means one, within different departments there should be coordinations. Third, where he has proposed the reforms is developmental reforms. Third is the developmental reforms. Developmental reforms. So here you take down repositioning of the UN developmental system. Repositioning of UN developmental system. Means you have these UN development programs, right? Problem with UN development programs, those who review it, they are from the European countries. So he is telling we have to bring country specific stuff which are there. So take on, a new generation of United Nations country teams have to be established. A new generation of UN country teams have to be established. Multi-country office review. Multi-country office review. Revamping the regional approach. Revamping the regional approach. Regional approach. And developing country specific plans. Developing country specific plans. Now in conclusion part, just you take on, Antonio Guterres says, multilateralism has to be remade for the 21st century. Multilateralism has to be remade for the 21st century. Otherwise, it will lead to rupture of United Nations. It will lead to the rupture of United Nations. United Nations. So now this is just a content what I gave in specific about his proposals. This was asked in 2021. It doesn't mean they'll ask the same question, but you can use these points when there is a question about what are the reforms that can be brought in UN. So it's more specific. It gives you a structure. Structure is what? Peacekeeping reforms, developmental reforms, and you have the secretarial reforms. Now if you read the question, just getting an idea that what he has spoken about, discuss the significance and urgency of the UN Security Council reforms. So you have to tell why UN Security has to be reformed. First part of the question. So obviously UN Security Council comprises of 5 permanent members, 10 non-permanent members, and obviously this reflects the power distribution of the world order which was there in 1945. Currently you can say many of these countries have seen a decline. Britain, France, and new emerging powers are there, India, Japan, Brazil, and you can say currently you can say the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the Israel-Palestinian issues, and inability of UN Security Council to arrive. Why? Because Russia has veto. This has reflected what the inability of UN to tackle the problems of present century, and UN was largely designed to tackle the problems of the Cold War. But however, we are living in a post-Cold War, and now the new issues are there. So obviously UN to reflect, it has to give space for democratization, and you have to space newer countries like India. What Shashi Tharoor says, that they have to be part of the Security Council, otherwise UN itself will lose legitimacy. So then you can say that relevance of the reforms. So relevance of the reforms, you know what is the reforms he proposed. Now there you need to connect with the point how these are important for developing countries. Simple now you can connect. Developing countries are demanding more say in UN peacekeeping operation, because they are supplying more number of soldiers, but they don't have any say. Second one, you can say the UN Secretariat is largely dominated by the bureaucracy from the West. So bringing these reforms, making it more delegated authority, will help developing countries to have a better say in this thing. Or third one, you can say developmental reforms. Many times developmental planning is done in the West, but they're implemented in developing countries. Now instead of decentralizing the developmental plans, it will make these development plans more successful because they know the ground reality. All you have to do is that connect it and write it how it is going to benefit the developing countries. So some questions will require specific information, and that is why when you go through previous year question, now you didn't know what is the proposal of Guterres. That is why first you have to know what is the proposal proposed by him. Rest you can easily connect and connect the dots. Or you can say let us take, do you agree with the view that despite the limitations in functioning of UN, it has distinguished and unique achievements to its credit? So here, just think about one, despite its limitations in functioning of UN. So here you will write your answer first, when was UN established, what was the mandate of the UN, and then you can say, however, there are certain criticism against the UN. What criticism? UN has been dysfunctional. UN has failed to address the Russia-Ukraine crisis. UN has failed to stop the Israel's, not Hamas, you can say the war on Gaza. UN has been also criticized by the Western, the Marxist scholars as a reflection of nothing but the American hegemony. Nevertheless, we can say UN has certain set of achievements. What are the achievements? One, you can say it has ensured that there has been no third world war. Second one, it has provided space for country to deliberate. UN peacekeeping operations, you can speak out the achievements. Till now, you can say they have done more than 60 peacekeeping operations. They have been able to resolve many conflicts. And UN has also now evolved into peace building operations. So you can say in many countries, they have also moved towards what? Peace building operations. Then you can say sustainable development goals they have come about. And this has also contributed to what? Empowerment of women, providing basic facilities to people at various parts. Then UN has been also successful in bringing many conventions into implementation. So you can say they have successfully lobbied for UN conventions on eliminating discrimination against women, UN conventions on what? Climate change. You can write these achievements what are there. But nevertheless, for UN to still play a crucial role, there has to be structural changes, functional changes in UN to tackle the problems of 21st century. Now you bring Antonio Guterres 2 or 3 proposals in your, what you can say, what changes? Then you can conclude your answer by the statement of Dag Hammarskjöld, who said, it should be always remembered that UN was not created to take us to heaven, but it has definitely ensured that we do not go into hell. So what you need to do in these kind of questions is that if you want more specificity, find some achievements of UN in one page. Anyway, I will be sharing that part of the content what I will give, achievements of UN, failures of UN. Go through that content. Simple. For everything you would have to, okay, what is their achievements? 3 or 4 major points, examples. Failures again you can say, Rwanda genocide, UN did not do anything. Russia-Ukraine conflict, continued human rights violation. Gaza, you can say, every day with Israeli bombing, lot of children are being killed. Or you can say UN's inability to respond to China's violation of UN conventions on laws of seas. So UN has a problem is that it lacks the teeth to bite. Most of the questions you see, they are mainly asking on these areas. This is one part. In part A, what they can ask regarding UN. Part B, what they will ask regarding UN is that obviously the question is about India and UN. Obviously in India and UN, there are two themes where they are largely asked. India's contribution to UN peacekeeping force. This is more objective question. You have to write. India was the first country to send an all-women contingent to Liberia. Indian soldiers have sacrificed their life. India has also contributed to peace building operation. Kiran Bedi, many election commissioners have been deployed in that regard. India also played a key role in peacekeeping operation ending the Korean crisis. India is the second largest contributor of the peacekeeping operations. More of information that will be in the notes which I will be sharing, that will have to go. The other question where they are asking about India and UN is that India's now permanent membership. So here you can break down into two parts. First of all, why is India demanding permanent membership? On what grounds? Second one, will India get membership? Means what is India's claim for demanding a permanent membership? Then what are the challenges? So if you look at why India is demanding a permanent seat, you can say there is now a change in Indian attitude also, or the Indian foreign policy also, from being idealistic in 1940s and 50s. Today Indian foreign policy is shifted towards more power politics, and India believes that a permanent membership in UN Security Council will help India to safeguard its interests. One, to safeguard any kind of internationalization of Kashmir, or second one, as India's powers expand in regard, it will also be a bargaining power what India can get. For example, countries with China, we can use our veto power to ask concessions from China for India's entry into NSG. Third one, obviously it is also status symbol, being a permanent member in the Security Council. But now what is India's claim to become a permanent member? What is India taking? So India is telling that India has claiming both on two grounds. One, on material grounds, and also at the ideational level. So on material grounds, what is India's claim? We are the largest democracy in the world. So India constitutes 16% of the global population, and that is what PM Modi said. For how long 1.3 billion people can be made to wait at the gates of UN Security Council. Second one, India is the third largest economy in terms of power purchasing parity. Third, India is a responsible nuclear weapon state. Fourth one, India is one of the largest contributor to the UN peacekeeping forces. Fifth, India today has also evolved into its role as a net security provider and as a leading power. India's military strength is also, we have the third largest army in the world, and obviously you can say we are also one of the 6 countries in the world which have nuclear powered submarines, and India is also space power in that regard, with India's ability to launch to what Chandrayaan or Mangalyaan missions. And India has also played a key role with respect to what, helping other countries during times of needs, such as Vaccine Maitri initiative, Operation Neer, Operation Rahat. It indicates India's increased capabilities, and India's global stature also today has increased because India has become more influential. We are today a part of G20. Today we are invited as an observer country in G7. Now at ideation level, India also says becoming one of the permanent member, we can also contribute to the global peace. So one, you can say like what Aurobindo Ghosh said, that India has a mission to take the world onto the path of spirituality. India is a civilizational state. Indian civilization has a lot offered to the world. For example, Gandhi's Ahimsa or Buddhist principle of Panchashil, yoga. On these grounds, India is claiming that we deserve a seat in the permanent seat in Security Council. Yeah, you can include Voice of Global South, etc. And being a permanent member, India will be able to protect the interest of the Global South countries. That is India's claim. But what are the challenges? that India faces from being a permanent member. One challenge is the coffee club. Second challenge is the administrative difficulties, means the process requires 2/3 majority and all the P5 countries to agree, and China remains the hurdle. Third, you can say, so India is not the only country, you have G4. So obviously now in Japan is being opposed by China, South Korea has opposed Japan, and you can also say that Argentina is opposing Brazil. And fourth one, the other countries are also not specific. For example, US and Russia have backed India's candidature, but they have not told when and how. And the other challenge is also African Union, which is there. It has demanded 2 permanent seats should be given to African countries, but again within them there are many contenders. And again there is lack of consensus that on what grounds the expansion of UN Security Council has to be done. It is whether on geographical representation, whether it is on military power, it is on economic power, on what grounds the representation, there is lack of consensus. And some have also questioned whether India has the required hard power, because some accuse that Delhi suffers from Panipat syndrome in that regard, and whether India can be a hard power, because with greater power comes greater responsibility. And some countries or some international groups are also tried to malign India's image by claiming that India does not have a good human rights track record. So these has been some challenges, or within India there are challenges. Some asking, like Ramchandra Guha says that why India is going for this fake glory when you have a lot of problems at home to resolve. But you can say what Shashi Tharoor says in his book Pax Indica. Shashi Tharoor in his book Pax Indica, he says, if India is not accommodated within the UN Security Council in the coming decade, UN itself will lose its legitimacy. Can we state that UN will lose legitimacy? Losing legitimacy is the answer. Okay, Purva, with regarding to what was the question, I didn't see. But this you can, now these points you can say regarding any questions which they have asked on India's membership to UN. So you can see in 2016 they have asked a question, India's membership to UN, is it a reality or a pipeline dream or something, they have asked like that. So here you can bring your answer, that what, first telling that why India is demanding a permanent seat in UN Security Council. Then you can speak about what are the challenges which are there. Then you can say that however few things have happened, India has formed G4, okay, India's global influence is increasing, India was also successfully able to bring Africa into G20, and India's acceptance can be also largely seen where now India defeated UK in the International Court of Justice for the position of judge. It shows that India is increasing influence. But nevertheless, you can say this is a long drawn process. It is not going to happen very quickly. So India should have patient diplomacy to achieve its goal. So these are the areas where you need to cover the questions on this India's need permanent membership in Security Council. So for these kind of things, not only scholars are important, your arguments are very important. So here I can say again, the notes what I would have shared, there you can use it. Like PM Modi's statement saying that what, for how long the UN 1.3 billion people can be made to wait at the gates of UN Security Council. Okay, so if you look at the questions in that regard, see here simple questions, let us take. Explain the importance of India's claim for a permanent seat in UN Security Council, or what are the various impediments to India's way to get a permanent seat in Security Council. Uniting for Consensus, also known as Coffee Club, has opposed claims of India and other countries over permanent seat. Point out their major objections. Same thing they will tell. Japan, they have told, see, South Korea has told Japan was an imperialist country, They have lost a lot of human rights. That's why they should be not given. Pakistan has told if you give India permanent membership, they'll use it against Pakistan's interest and it will disturb the balance of power which is there in South Asia. Argentina and Brazil, Argentina says we are more economically powerful. Or these African Union countries, they have told it should be based on geographical grounds, not based on power politics, the expansion. So they say that Africa and Latin America are not represented. So 2 new members should be in that country. You can bring out those objections in that regard. And again you can say critically analyze China's role in international politics against India's demand for permanent seat in UN Security Council. Again you can say China is backing indirectly the coffee club countries, China Pakistan's nexus in that regard. China is maintaining ambiguity. They are telling that they want to see India play a greater role in international politics. They are not specifying what is that greater role. Or China's already stand on NSG reflects that China's objection there will be an objection to India's UN Security Council. China highlighting every time what you can say the issues of human rights violations in India to delegitimize India's claim, or they are questioning India not signing NPT, that India is not a responsible nuclear weapon state. All these points you can write. See, most of the question here is 2 things: permanent Security Council seat or India's role in peacekeeping operation. These are the only 2 areas. So what you need to do for this is that prepare 1-1-page notes. I'll share that 1-1-page notes, just go through it. But as I said, practice 1 or 2 answers, what you're going to write. Don't fill your answer with viewpoints. 1 or 2 viewpoints should be there should be more arguments. That is the key to score well in these parts. So for online students, you have any doubt? Purva, I didn't understand your question with regards to what you're asking. Can we state that UN will lose legitimacy, or losing legitimacy is the answer? So I missed your question with regards to what you asked that question. So any other doubt here you have regarding UN? Now similarly, let us take one more last topic for today, that is International Criminal Court. This is in news. Why it has been in news? One, they had issued arrest warrant against Putin. Right. So there can be a question on International Criminal Court. So question might come, but again, no, broadly 3 things. One, they can ask about its structure, its mandate, and its limitations or achievements and limitations. So plain and simple, here basic idea of International Criminal Court was established in 2005 under Rome Statute. So basically, what is the unique thing about International Criminal Court? ICJ largely dealt with interstate dispute, but ICC for the first time it will allow individuals can be trialed for crimes such as genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. And you can say here it is not part of UN, but however UN Security Council can refer cases to International Criminal Court. And International Criminal Court, it is not an alternative jurisdiction to the domestic courts, it is a complementary jurisdiction to the domestic courts, and it also has advisory jurisdiction. And you can say the International Criminal Court will trial a person, but however it cannot give death sentence. So now if you look at what are the achievements of the International Criminal Court. So one, you can say it has focused on protecting human rights. Second one, till now you can say many African leaders or dictators have been prosecuted. Third, it has been also been able to what? Limit the powers, or what you can say, the war crimes. because now they are more conscious of the existence of International Criminal Court. And it has also strengthened the voice of the international NGOs which are working towards what? The protection of human rights. So it has strengthened the what you can say, human rights, what you can say, what is the word? Umbrella in the world. But however, there are certain limitations of this International Criminal Court. One, many countries have not signed the 2005 Rome Statute, including major countries such as India, China, US, and Russia. And you can say in recent times they can give arrest warrant, but it should be implemented by the member countries. So in powerful countries like Russia is involved, it was not. Second one, African countries have complained that International Criminal Court has only targeted the African leaders in that regard. So they've termed it as a new form of imperialism, the European imperialism targeting African leaders. It has been also a tool of Western powers to target what? Non-friendly regimes to the West. And the other thing is that it can only take up cases post 2005. It does not have retrospective jurisdiction. It can give verdicts, but the implementation of the verdicts will depend upon the will of what? The member states. So it also works as what? Covenant without swords will be merely words. And sometimes it has as reverse effect. What is reverse effect? For example, when in some African countries it was observed that where the leaders have been targeted by International Criminal Court, these leaders have used the targeting of ICC by the International Criminal Court as a Western agenda, and that they have gained more popularity and they have gone on to win the elections. Hence you can say International Criminal Court can only function effectively in that regard provided its recommendations has the teeth to implement it, or more number of important countries in the world they become part of the International Criminal Court. And third one, they should be more fair in looking at human rights violation, not only in developing countries but also in the developed world. So something like that. So for this also I'll share my class notes which is there. So you have their details also, specific details of names of those leaders who have been prosecuted. And you also have certain keywords which is there, you can go through that. So for international institutions, this is the structure that what you need to build for answering the questions. Again here 1 or 2 questions will come. So for this you don't need to worry too much. But I don't know, like specific reforms what we told that Antonio Guterres, that a vague idea you need to have to write a answer. So in tomorrow's class we'll take up further thing as NAFTA, NATO, okay, how they are currently working. Then we look into India and European Union, right? Then we look into democracy, terrorism, climate change negotiations, and we'll also look into IMF, World Bank and WTO. So that we'll be trying to cover in tomorrow's class. So I think I'll need one more class again on Monday to do the bilateral relations and comparative politics. So I'll need again I think 2 more classes or 3 more classes, so that will inform you. So tomorrow timings will be different, it will be 9:30 to 1:30 morning, 9:30 to afternoon 1:30. So it's 5:30 to 8:30 today, but tomorrow it is 9:30 to 1:30. So we'll take up these issues in tomorrow's class. But again, I'll be sharing the notes, go through the notes, but write again lot of previous year questions. Try to brainstorm what points you can write. Here the problem will be that you might have too much content, but you have to know how to mold it into the question what they've asked and arrange them systematically. Get a point? So International Criminal Court can be asked this time in the exam since it is in news. Okay, ICJ they've asked 2 or 3 times. IMF and World Bank generally they ask this what is that? that is also connected to this international economic order. Okay, so there we can link those points: Washington consensus, Cornwall consensus, neoliberal economic order. What is the challenges? New means globalization. All this can be interconnected. Understand? So that we'll take up in tomorrow's class. So okay, then we'll end the class today. We'll continue tomorrow.